They're highly vulnerable to fishing.
And I'm not sure it's really rebounding. It seemed like it was rebounding for a while now. It seems like the numbers are going back down.
No one knows how many animals are out there as individuals.
They are among the largest fish in the sea. Impressive in size, these behemoths have been known to top nearly 800 pounds. Individual residents usually occupy one area of reef or structure. But for a brief time each year during the summer months, these huge animals come together in what's known as the aggregation. During this event, resident and transient animals socialize in large numbers at specific locations to mate. It's an impressive sight, not unlike historic accounts, but deceiving, as this mating aggregation is short-lived, and the animals soon disperse. 50 years ago, their size and their numbers made the Goliath grouper a target for sportsmen and commercial interests. 20 years later, the species was on the brink of an irreversible slide toward extinction. As it turns out, they are highly vulnerable to overfishing. Today, through good fishery management decisions, the Goliath grouper enjoys protection from harvest and is listed as a critically endangered species by the International Union for Conservation of Nature.
Lately there's been some talk about reopening up the Goliath grouper fishery, but in fact it's already open. It's an illegal harvest like the conch, queen conch, and the turtle, but it's open. People are taking them. And sadly, I think for some species, especially in Florida, there's so many people and the demand for seafood is so high that the only way to have a sustainable harvest of some of these species is just to close it completely. And the illegal take is going to be your optimum yield, or maybe even your maximum sustainable yield. It's sad, but that's just the way it is. So it's being harvested now, and I'm not sure it's really rebounding. It seemed like it was rebounding for a while now. It seems like the numbers are going back down. So I don't see how you can control it if you open it. It's just, it would just be out of control quickly.
Whether or not we're at the recovery to pre-recovery levels isn't believed to be the case. And so we're in a recovery phase. There's no data that support a practical reason for reopening the fishery right now. And that's really what we have to base our decisions on. The political pressure to do this isn't necessarily a practical reason for doing so. So today, we need to keep concentrating on making practical decisions about this.
Already the numbers are falling off, and we think that's as much incidental bycatch as environmental, because the water quality here is poor compared to what it once was. We keep dumping a lot of nutrient-rich fresh water out of Lake Okeechobee, and there's other environmental degradation, but the bottom line is these fish are not exploding. They've reached their zenith, and they seem to already be in decline, and that's without any directed legal harvest.
In addition to vulnerability to fishing would be that they're heavily contaminated with mercury. Chris Malinowski has demonstrated that the mercury levels in Goliath grouper are so high that they're actually dangerous for people to eat them. They're more contaminated than any other reef fish in the southeastern United States. They're incredibly high in mercury. In fact, so high that it appears that some of the mercury, the ones with the highest mercury concentrations, are actually sick and dying from it. There's good evidence of that. And so it's very high. It's not just that it's a slight problem. So in my mind, to open this fishery is irresponsible. It's irresponsible because the people that are going to eat this fish, and heaven forbid if it's pregnant women and small children, they're going to take on a large amount of this neurotoxin.
So they're toxic to consume, they're very dangerous, and what we're seeing is, if we compare the levels that we're seeing in Goliath grouper to FDA limits, U.S. FDA, and also the EPA limits. FDA is the legal, regulates the legal sale of seafood, and EPA sort of has those risk assessment levels that they set a little bit lower than FDA, but we're seeing that Goliath grouper can be as high as 25 times what EPA limits are. And so what we're seeing is that there's a huge range in mercury levels in the adults, and so if you're eating one, you don't know that it's either at that high limit or if it's at a lower limit, which is still going to be above all of the, I should mention, all of the adults are above that EPA limit, and a majority are above the FDA limit. And so if you have an individual that's 25 times higher, that's a huge gamble. You don't know if you're consuming one that's much lower or much higher. And so it's really sort of a game of roulette at that point from a human consumption standpoint. And so it's not safe to consume.
I think a final reason that is also equally important is that the ecotourism industry has become very interested in this fish. There's nowhere in the world where you can see Goliath grouper in the abundance and up close and personal as you can in the South Florida. There's nowhere.
Goliath groupers on the Treasure Coast and West Palm Beach are very important to our dive industry and the divers in the area. The ecotourism that comes from people wanting to see them and visit them are incredible.